Good afternoon and welcome to St Peter's Church, Conisbrough on this beautiful sunny December afternoon. The history of Conisbrough is intertwined with the history of Christianity in this area. The preaching cross I have at the side of me is dated from around 400 AD. At this time, Aurelius Ambrosius was a Roman Christian left behind after the Romans left Britain for good. And it is this preaching cross that was the focal point of their meetings, other than we know that they met, people from the village here, right here on this spot, met with Roman Christians down at the River Don, where there was a ford across the Don. In 1982, a survey by South Yorkshire County Council acknowledged that this church was built around 740-750 AD. Since that time, we've had information coming through other archaeologists that it was more likely to have been built around 680 AD. And an evidence of that is the masonry behind me, which is probably from around 680 to 683. One archaeologist put it to us that the masonry above here was built actually by the same hands that built a church at Monk Wearmouth in Sunderland, which is dated by the Venerable Bede as being built in 673 AD. So it's very unlikely that the same builders could build Monk Wearmouth in 673 and then build this in 740. They would need to be about 120 years old, not logical. So we think that the age of 680 AD is far more likely. A second person, an archaeologist, looked at this masonry above and said straight away that that is no later than 680 AD. These two individuals never met each other, and they came around 2 years apart. So I think that we can assume that they know what they're talking about and that the masonry is actually from 680, 683 AD. The Saxon church, as built, was entered through a doorway that was in this position. The arch has been expanded later after a new doorway was built. But the entrance came through into an entrance porch there. It wasn't called a tower at that time, it was an entrance porch that then led into the nave. These stones are key to dating this church. They are identical in size and the way they've been laid to those laid at the Bishop's Church in Monk Wearmouth, Sunderland, as I've recently mentioned here. The side alternate is that they're laid on a side vertically rather than flat as would be normal practice. This stone on the same southwest corner of the nave has grooves in it where, when it was an external wall up to 1200 AD, the villagers had been sharpening implements or weapons in the stone. The Saxon nave, as built, was 44 feet long and 18 feet wide. It has two high windows at either side of the nave, which are now infilled, and centrally on each side was a small window which gave access to the porticus on the north side and the south side. These were two-storey buildings, and on the north side, which we can see the window here infilled, was occupied by the priest in charge of the church, and he could get his head through the thickness of the wall to be able to see who was coming into church. This lintel and the infilled doorway below it show where the access was into a lateral chamber that was just outside the nave, from the porticus down to the corner of the church. The chancel, as built, by the Saxons was a very small one and a very small entrance arch, and that was later doubled to twice its size, and this archway expanded and a large arch put in its place to allow access, viewing access right through the chancel. The enlargement to the chancel and the chancel arch was done in 1050 AD. In 1150 AD, after the castle had been built, Conisbrough thrived as a centre of habitation, and the size of the church wasn't adequate for the number of people wanting to use it. So internal alterations were made to accommodate more people. And the first two arches here behind me were installed in 1150. In 1175, only 25 years after the first two arches had been installed, the population had grown so much that the church needed expanding yet again. This time, the north porticus was done away with completely, and the line of the lateral chamber extended right through to the back of the entrance porch, forming a narrow aisle, and this was facilitated by a third arch being added. This third arch is now sat on a capital which almost certainly came from the Roman villa. If we have looked at it closely, it has a Roman soldier defaced by the iconoclasts of the 16th century, but it has a Roman soldier there depicted with a leather pleated skirt. The Roman soldier here with the leather skirt and his arms outstretched, his head, the face was knocked off by the iconoclasts. There shall be, as this one has on the far corner, there shall be no graven image was their statement, and unfortunately it has been defaced in that way. And here we notice that the soldier's arm appears to be being swallowed by a serpent. Archaeologists are particularly interested in this frieze. You see wave patterns, and that is taken to depict the English Channel as the Roman soldiers crossed over to invade Britain in the first place. Many of the pews in this church are by Robert Thompson, the Mouseman of Kilburn, and every piece of his work has a mouse carved out of the solid wood. The round Saxon arches, as used on the north wall, were superseded by the Norman pointed arches on the south wall. The height of the nave was increased in 1200 from the bottom of these existing windows today to the top of those existing windows in 1475, when the church was remodelled, giving it the perpendicular look which was prevalent at that time. The height of the roof was raised a further 3 feet. In 1325, the last of the porticus was demolished, and the wall behind me was rebuilt wider right to the corner of the pulpit. Recycled from the old lateral chamber are an aubrey and a piscina or bowl. The aubrey was for storing the communion vessels, and the piscina for washing them out after the use. The castle was only under siege once. That was when Lancaster got huffy about the Yorkists kidnapping his wife. The church was under siege once when the Devesi brothers set about the King's bailiff when he came to collect his taxes from the church. They had the advantage of having a bar to go across the doorway and draw a bar out right across the doorway and lock it in a pocket at this side to hold the doors firmly shut. A spiral staircase was added in 1475 to give access to the bell tower and to the roof. In 1475, the chancel, having been square since 1050, was now extended to twice its length, including the stonework to the east window, but it would have been plain leaded glass at that time, not the stained patterned glass you see today. The easternmost beam of the nave is from the roof of 1200 AD and reused in this position in 1475 when the walls were raised yet again. In 1475, at the same time as this massive restoration and extension of the church, a vestry was built out on the north side here, and this was the priest's access into the vestry. It would appear that we had 4-foot high priests at the time, but that's not so. The remainder of the doorway is buried as these floors have been raised, because there are many ancient burials inside the church, and the soil got raised and raised until it put this doorway out of proportion. But in 1866, the vestry was wiped away completely, and these are the only two signs of it right now. This was the priest's window, which was there for the same reason as the higher one in the nave, where the priest could look out to see who's come to the communion table. This hagioscope was cut through the solid walls in 1200 AD to allow people who were sat in the far corner of the church to see the priest at the communion table while we had a square chancel. I'm now stood where the priest would have stood in front of the communion table, so that the communicants in the far side of the church, in the north side aisle, would be able to see the priest giving the blessing to the communion. When the first two arches were installed in 1150, a third arch was installed in this direction at 90 degrees to the other two, that brought an arch over to support the east side of the north porticus. In 1866, the narrow north aisle was extended out to twice its width, incorporating all the masonry from the narrow aisle, and that included two 13th century windows towards the west end of this aisle. The 1866 narrow aisle was demolished and the stonework brought out to widen the north aisle to twice its width, incorporating the stonework from the original windows of the 12th century. And inside the windows are the ancient glasses depicting Joseph, Noah and Jacob. And the other window behind me has also got depictions of characters from the Old Testament. This brass plaque lists the protagonists who were responsible for the work done to this area of the church, the widening of the aisle, etc. in 1866. This brought great consternation from both the village and archaeologists around the world. That once was beautiful was now bland and insipid. These are the words of the report in the London Times. There was a pamphlet printed that was attributed to northern vandals, and this again laid scorn on the work that had been done to this church. There were murals on the walls, frescoes that were damaged, removed, without any record being kept. In 1912 to 14, a new vestry was built that has a robing room for the vicar and a church office, and beyond that is a small kitchen and toilets. This altar slab, with 5 consecration crosses on it, one in the centre, one at each corner, 2 here, was discovered in the castle grounds in 1923 and brought into the church, where it's now used as a focal point for prayer for people, families, the community, the world. And we have a notice board there, a prayer request board, that people come along with their little slips of paper and put in the request of who to be prayed for, and then at the far side the thanks for the prayer that has been given and answered. There are pieces of Roman masonry in the church that are said to come from a Roman bathhouse. Now, with the discovery only just a few years ago of the Roman villa across the valley there, this is obviously where these and many more in the church came from. This sculpture is a recent addition. It was made by a late dear friend of the congregation who passed away in 1999, and it depicts Jesus holding his hand out saying, "Follow me," as he has to millions of Christians since. This is a Romano-British tomb chest, and there are no more Romano-British than Aurelius Ambrosius, a Roman who stayed behind after the Romans left Britain. He stayed and lived and died here, and he gathered armies of indigenous Britons to fight the Saxons, and he was well revered, and this could well be his tomb chest. If we look on the front of the tomb chest, there's a dragon here, a smaller serpent there, a knight with his shield and sword ready to strike the dragon, and behind him is a priest with a bishop's crozier, which metaphorically shows the knight defending the faith from evil. This brass plaque records every priest and vicar that served here from the Doomsday Book to the current day. This window is my favourite window in the church. It was created by a company formed by Prince Albert, the Prince Consort of Queen Victoria, and it depicts the two men who Jesus met on the road to Emmaus after the resurrection, and the logo at the bottom of it is straight from Scripture, and their eyes were opened and they knew him. You see the quality of that. You look through the windows even beyond the people that sat there in such great detail. And this was done by the company that formed by Prince Albert, who was very disappointed with the quality of the normal stained glass windows of the east window. Two collages are from Asian glasses. In the left window we see a depiction of the Virgin Mary in mourning at the foot of the cross. On this side we have an Armenian bishop named St. Blaise, and he was sainted for the way he died, in that his body was raked with a wool rake to fetch the flesh off his back before he was beheaded. You see his mitre of the bishop with the bishop's crozier. This is a Romano-British carving which is dated around 400 AD. But what would a solid stone carving be of any use to the native Britons outside? They were living in wood huts at the time, so the only logical explanation is that this carving again came from the Roman villa across the valley. I hope you've enjoyed this brief history of our wonderful church, a testament to God and to the people who over the centuries have maintained it as a place of worship, peace and tranquility. We invite you to come and join us in the awe that is the history of this wonderful church. And moreover, we would invite you to come to any church services that we have. But more, come and join us in worshipping the one true God, Father, Son and Holy Spirit. Goodbye and thank you.